Good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Reed. I'm the director of Bridgewater State University Senior College. Welcome to our last of our three-part faculty showcase for our winter spring 2023 semester. It's so great to have you here to learn a bit more about senior college, and then we'll spend the rest of tonight just hearing directly from our great faculty who are here. And tonight they'll be introducing themselves to you and then giving you a little bit of telling you what you can expect to learn in their course. So first of all, I just wanted to thank my colleague, Darlene Marks. She's here tonight just kind of helping me with the waiting room, and as always is kind of helping us behind the scenes. And sometimes I'm sure some of you email with her. So thanks for being here, Darlene. Appreciate that. If you have any questions as we go along tonight, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to give a very quick introduction to senior college because as I look around the Zoom squares, I think all of you know what senior college is. I don't think we have anyone new in the room. So I will give the 2-minute version of normally what I give is like a 5-minute version. So senior college is a lifelong learning program here at Bridgewater State University where we bring together our faculty that work here in the university, and then we also bring other scholars and experts from outside the university to offer non-credit courses. The courses are for enrichment's sake, for learning. I had a voicemail today from someone who said she was calling to ask about senior college and she wanted to know if there were any tests or papers. And so I called her back immediately and said, no, there's no tests, no papers. It's just learning for learning's sake. Some classes, depending on the type of class, might have out of class expectations or recommendations, like a literature class might have books that you'd like to read. And obviously, if you're in that class, you would want to read the books because it would enhance your experience in the course. But a lot of our classes aren't set up like that, and there's no expectation that you would have to do things outside of class. We have an open enrollment model here at senior college, so our members can take as many courses as they like for the single registration fee of $85. So we have almost 50 courses, both in person and via Zoom, just like we're here tonight. So you can take, we have lots of folks that just take one course. They just have one that's interested, but we also have a whole heck of a lot of folks that take like 5, 6, 7 courses. Some people like Evie might not even have time to do her own laundry anymore because she's so busy taking classes. So you can do whatever suits you. We have a situation this semester, which I'm so excited about. We have a member of senior college who joined and she's taking the virtual classes with her mother. So our member lives in Massachusetts and then her mother just joined from Maryland. So they're going to be taking a couple classes together, so I just think it's a really sweet way to connect with a friend or a loved one, is to encourage them to join senior college and maybe take a virtual class together. Because it's virtual, we have members now from 7 different states. And so the only thing we ask of you is to just, if you enjoy your time in senior college, please spread the word to your friends, family, and neighbors. We have a great Facebook page, so you can always look us up on there, just Bridgewater State University Senior College. And we post a lot of information about classes and events there. So you can tag someone if you're on Facebook on one of those posts, that's always great. Or if you're on social media and you can share it, that's even better. Okay, so tonight, again, we'll just hand it over to the instructors who are here, and they will introduce themselves, and then they will give you a brief, synopsis of, what you can expect to learn in their class. And then I will say to the instructors, if there is if you could share how the class will be delivered, whether or not it's a lecture course or a discussion course or the format of the particular course, that would be really helpful as well. Will you have guests in the class or whatever that might be? I think it's helpful if people can know how they can expect to learn. That will help them make their decision for whether or not to enroll in your class. And one thing I wanted to say just to the people, the potential members and members in the audience, if you see us offering a course with a particular instructor every semester, there's one reason why we're doing that. It's because they're really good and popular. So when people are invited back time and time again, sometimes people aren't invited back and it's because they're busy and they only want to teach one course with us. So that it's no reflection on the particular instructor, but there's a couple here tonight. I'm thinking of Nan Loggains, of course, Dr. Toe, Ron Reynolds is another great example. So when you see them coming back over and over again, it's because they're very popular and people really enjoy learning with them. So that's why they're here and we're thrilled to have them back. And then we always try to have a good amount of new faculty as well, so that we have, exciting things and new personalities that we get to interact with. Okay, so let's get started. Let's start with Nan Loggains, and then after Nan, we'll turn it over to Wing Kai To. Nan, welcome.
Just got to remember to unmute. I'm Nan Loggains. It's spelled with a silent A, which is kind of tricky. We'll blame my husband's side of the family on that, but it's like Loggins, and I say as in Loggins and Messina, and my students just give me a blank look when I mention that duo now. I started teaching in the BSU Senior College during the height of the pandemic when everything was moved on to Zoom, and I just love doing it. So I'll be offering several new courses and a couple of returning favorites. We'll have the political discussion group again, and it meets, might have to help me out here, but I think it's Wednesdays at 10 and it's 12 weeks long. We do take a break during the spring break, but other than that, it runs pretty much the whole semester. And it's a lot of fun. All voices are welcome. We break into small groups and then come back as the whole group and talk about topics of the day, pretty much hot off the press. So I imagine next week we may be talking about someone like George Santos. There's probably people who would like to share what their feelings on him, but lots of different things. It's not necessarily personalities, it's different political topics. And I'll also be offering the 1990s, which kind of ended up a series. I did the 70s a year or so ago, then the 80s, and then the 90s. But I have a new class, Hoaxes and Conspiracies, and that begins next Tuesday, I believe. And both the 90s class and Hoaxes and Conspiracies are semi-lecture. It's not the lectures you might remember from your days in college. It's fine to interrupt. And then I always, at the end of each section, open it up for questions and comments. And then, of course, the political discussion is, like I said, topics of the day. It's all discussion. And then something new starting. I talked to Jennifer, oh gosh, maybe the middle of last semester. There was some interest in a book group, and I have facilitated book groups at all age levels from little ones in elementary school all the way up to adults. I currently facilitate one with Bristol Community College faculty where I teach. But we're going to start a book group, and Jen wrote me, and I believe it's already full or pretty close to full. And we'll only meet 3 times because I know people are busy. So about every 6 weeks, we'll meet and discuss a book. The first one is going to be The Other Wes Moore. And you might have heard he was recently elected governor of Maryland. And I read this book when it first came out in another book group quite a few years ago. And I thought it would be an interesting book to start with. And then the group itself will help decide the next 2 books. But I didn't think it would work well to meet the first time and then discuss, which book we're gonna read. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think that's about it. I need to move on to someone else. I don't want to take too much time.
Nan, thank you. And I've been pronouncing your name incorrectly all these years. So Nan Loggains, got it, silent A. I also didn't know if you saw on page 6 of our course catalog that we have a little section for instructor appreciation. And so you have the distinct honor, maybe that's of having taught the most senior college classes. So
Oh, wow.
Prior to this semester, you've offered 13 courses with us. So
wow.
We are so thrilled, as always, to be back with you. And I don't know if your ears were ringing earlier today. One of our members was telling me in a different event that her grandson is a student at Bridgewater, and he's running like a some kind of club or conversation, or he's doing a project on like how to facilitate conversation that remains civil when it's about, you know, politics and things that people feel really passionate about. And the member was saying that she wanted him to talk to you because you're such a great facilitator in keeping conversations, you know, civil and having a civil discourse in your courses. So we're eternally grateful to you
Thank
for
you.
taking these important classes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so then now up next, let's have Dr. Toe, and then after Dr. Toe, we'll have Beth and Nish. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jen. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Yeah, sometimes my computer is a little bit, the volume is not very clear. So if you're from BSU or from Bridgewater, you probably know about me, but if you're not, I've only taught the senior college once because my day job is pretty busy. So I also had a chance to teach other continuing studies courses. So a year and a half ago, I taught a class called Global Issues and focusing on some of the environmental challenges and some of the other issues facing the world today. I oversee the Global Engagement Institute at Bridgewater State. So my role is to support international education at BSU. I think since I focus on international education, I also teach the higher education administration program, teaching about international education. So when I do a senior college class, I like to utilize my expertise and experience and bring about a conversation about around the world, about the world. So this time I'm trying something new. During the pandemic, I was able to connect our students to have conversations with international students in other parts of the world through Zoom, and also have opportunities to connect the professors to talk to other professors from the other part of the world. So I've been implementing the virtual international exchange program at BSU. So students can actually work with students from other parts of the world. So my point is that when you try to learn about the world, you can hear from me, even though I'm quite familiar with most of the cultures in the world, but there's nothing better than working with people from other countries and also hear from their direct experiences. So in this class, I'm teaching 8 weeks, beginning from February 3rd. I'm the only one who's teaching a class that is the first hour of the day. So I don't know if you watched tennis before, and you might have the concept of breakfast at Wimbledon. So I was thinking about either calling this class like breakfast around the globe, but actually I decided not to use this title, but just call it like conversations with cultures around the world. So essentially in the 8 weeks, I'll bring you around the world and have topics talking about education, culture, society in different continents. So on the one hand, we try to understand Asia, Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East. I may not have guests from Australia and New Zealand, but I do promise that I will have guests coming from African cultures, Asian cultures, European cultures, and Middle Eastern cultures, and Latin American cultures. And the guests are usually from 3 groups. One is the BSU professor community, and the other is the BSU student community. The third is the international education community. So you may actually have one of those weeks you'll be talking to people from other countries as well. So each week I will start off with some observations, and as part of the weeks will be a moderated interview, almost like I will be interviewing the person and having some conversations. You listen to it. And some other weeks could be a breakout room discussions or small group discussions. And some weeks could be an open exchange of conversations. But it'll be a guided exchange. So I promise it will be fun. But you have to get up at 7. So you can take my class from 8 to 9.
Yes, I think we should have called it, Breakfast Across the World. I like that title. This is so exciting. Where else can you have this opportunity to sit and have, these cross-cultural conversations directly from the comfort of your own home? We're so thrilled to have you back, Wing Kai. Thank you so much. And I look forward to this class, and I hope people will join your course. I'm sure they will. Actually, we already have a lot of people signed up for it. I don't want to tell you how many because there's a lot. So it's great. Okay, so up next we'll have Beth, and then after Beth, we'll turn it over to Ron. Welcome, Beth. It's so nice to meet you in person.
Thank you.
I just tell people how I'm shameless in my observation of what's happening here at the university because I'm always looking for senior college instructors. And so this semester I taught a class in our graduate school. And so I got on the listserv for all the events that were, people were looking to, have students come to different events. So I saw that Beth was offering a guest lecture here at Bridgewater State University, and I just cold emailed her and was like, oh, this would be a great senior college course. And she was open, and I'm thrilled that you're here. So let's hear a little bit more about you and what we can learn in your course.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jen. I love this idea. I love the whole concept of the senior college. My parents were lifelong learners into their 80s at Worcester State. I'm from Worcester, so it's near and dear to my heart, for sure. Like I said, I'm from Worcester, but I teach in Rhode Island. I teach at the Community College of Rhode Island. I teach English, and I'm actually moving into administration there now. But my love and my expertise is in Irish American literature. And last year I published a book on Irish American fiction from World War II to JFK, which is what I was at Bridgewater giving the lecture on in the fall. I've also been an adjunct instructor at Bridgewater. I taught an online course a few years ago on 19th century Irish American lit, which is, 19th century Irish lit. But this course that I'm doing this term, starting February 1 for 6 weeks, is an online course. It's called Exploring the Irish American Experience Through Literature. And it's basically a fun way for me to talk about books that show up in my book that I've written about and presented on lots of different places. I focus on the immediate post-World War II era because it's so interesting. All these books I kept seeing in the fiction of that time from Irish American authors, they were reflecting back on their grandparents' communities of the turn of the 20th century. And so they were writing in the 1940s and 50s, say, but they were thinking back to their childhoods. They were third generation Americans themselves, most of them. So they were writing about what they remembered from their youth and their grandparents, and they kind of fictionalized these places they grew up. One of the books is set in Holyoke, Mass. That's the parish on the hill. Another book is set in Providence, Rhode Island. That's Our Own Kind. And the third is, well, he never names it, but Edwin O'Connor usually writes about a city that sounds a lot like Boston. So they're very close to us geographically. They're very rich with memories of Irish America. And the point of my book, and what I'll talk about in the class too, the authors writing at this time seemed to have this anxiety that they were losing that connection to their grandparents' communities as they became more Americanized as the generations went by. So we'll be talking about all of that. The first night, February 1st, I want to kind of set the stage and talk about some of the history and what was going on at that time, why that time seems to be such a turning point in Irish America. And then the remaining weeks we'll just be discussing those novels. So for anyone who signed up already, I think there were 25 people as of last week, big group. I sent out a list of the books. They're also mentioned in the description of the course so that people could have some lead time to either find them in libraries or to buy them online. I've had a lot of good luck finding these books used copies of these books for $10 or so online. So I think that's it. So mostly it will be discussion based. It'll be kind of a book club too, after that first night of class. And I'll guide the discussion, but I also want to hear from folks in the class about how they're connecting with these books and their memories and all of that too.
Thank you so much, Beth. Not last semester, but the semester before, we had a course that was kind of like a travel log course that focused on the Dingle Peninsula, and it was really popular. I took the course actually because the course was in the spring, and my partner and I were going to Ireland in May. And so it was just incredible to have this like rich experience. And that instructor talked a bit about the like history of that area of Ireland. And
Nice.
so it was really, really fun. There's obviously, you know, in Massachusetts, there's so many of our members who are of Irish descent, including myself. And I'm going back to Ireland in March of this year too. And now I think you're motivating me to read those books. I think that would be really
Oh, that's
exciting.
great.
So I might
I'm planning a trip in May for my kids are college age. They've never been over. So we're planning a family trip for the first time for May. So I was doing that before I jumped on here, trying to
so
find
fun.
places to stay.
So fun.
And I should
Go
say,
ahead.
even if you're not of Irish descent, there's a lot of common ground with other immigrant experiences in these books too. And that can make for a really interesting conversation as well, like how the different generations handle, you know, passing down traditions or feeling like they're being alienated from them. So fun stuff. Looking
Great.
forward to talking
We're
about it.
so excited to have you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so up next we have Ron Reynolds, and then after Ron, we'll hand it over to Dave Kindy.
Hi, everybody. I think I'm unmuted about that.
Yeah, you're keep talking, Ron. You sound a little.
Okay, is my voice coming through?
Yes, now it is. Now it sounds good.
Okay, yeah, I see what happened up on the issue. I'm having trouble with these headphones tonight. That'll help. I'm having trouble with these headphones tonight. I'm getting used to my hearing aids. I've had them for a week now, and it's strange.
Whatever you just did, it's perfect now. Good job,
Yeah.
Ron. Good job.
Well, it's been promoting domestic harmony. I've had a couple of courses I've run in this program, which were essentially travelogues. I had one on Canada between Ottawa and Newfoundland, and I had another program on the national parks. And anyway, during those courses, I showed a lot of pictures like this one that I took up on the eastern end of Prince Edward Island. And this one that I took in Newfoundland. And anyway, as I went through the images that I had, a lot of the comments kind of gave me the idea that perhaps it might be nice to run a course that would help people with basic photography, which of course today has become digital. Some of us may remember film. And frankly, I don't miss it. I love the digital imaging. You can do so much more with it. And anyway, the class that I'm teaching, I'm planning to make interactive. And I'm assuming most of the people that'll be in the course this time will be essentially beginners or have some experience, but certainly haven't mastered the art of photography. I got interested in photography years ago. It's kind of a quirk. My first teaching job was at Case High School in Swansea back in the early 60s. And when I interviewed for it, the things went well with the superintendent, and I could tell he was ready to hire me. And then there was a but. And he said, one thing, he said, the person we hire has to supervise the camera club. do you know anything about photography? And I gulped and said, yes, which was a lie, but I wanted the job. And as soon as I got a contract, the first thing I did was run out and get a camera and get a bunch of books on photography and figure out what I was doing. And once I did, I was hooked. So I've had photography as a hobby for something now approaching 65 years. And I've got thousands of pictures stored on my computer, had a lot of fun with it. And what I visualize doing is I want to first talk about how to take better pictures, be more conscious of what you're doing when you take the photos. And I'm going to consider the fact that a lot of people today are into iPhoneography, and those things can take some pretty darn good pictures. Or some people may have a real dedicated camera, and I'm going to talk about those too. And what I want to do is look at a number of pictures. Hopefully some of the students will volunteer to send me images they have, and we can put them on and critique them, and hopefully it'll be constructive criticism. I would expect that based on my experience with the students here. And after spending some time on how to take better pictures and what qualities is it in a photo that makes you like it, or what are the things in a photo that you don't like seeing a traffic light in one corner of the picture that you inadvertently took. And then what I want to do is look at a software called Photoshop Elements. You've probably heard of Photoshop, but there's a less high-powered version. Photoshop itself is really for professionals, and most of us, even serious amateurs, don't need it. But Photoshop Elements is pretty easy to use, and I want to demonstrate how we can make corrections on some pictures. I've taken so many pictures that because of the lighting conditions, things were dark. How can you brighten them up? How can you enrich your colors? Did you get something in the picture you don't want? How can you get it out of there? How can you crop it? Sometimes you get so much sky with no clouds in it, it just looks empty. Crop it out. I want to show students how to do that. And as we go along, I'm going to ask my students to jump right in, make comments. What do you like about that picture? What bothers you? And show how we can correct it. And I know from past experience, I usually ask my students to keep themselves unmuted unless they're in a noisy house, and just break in when you have a question or a comment. And this will be more interactive, though, than some of my other classes have been, because the travelogues, particularly, I depended heavily on PowerPoint, where I just went from one picture to another and would make comments on it. Here, I want to show you what's on my computer. When we correct something in Photoshop Elements, I'm going to put my screen right up on this so you can see what I'm doing. And if this goes well, maybe there will be a part 2, which will take us to a little more advanced stage. But I love taking pictures. I was very active in the Hockomock digital photographers for quite a long time, but I've had to become inactive. I'm having trouble with my vision, and it gets embarrassing putting pictures up on the screen that have spots in them and I can't see them. And it's just one of the vagaries of aging. I say frequently, aging stinks, but it beats the alternative. I think most of us would agree with that. Right. So are there any questions or comments?
I don't see any questions. I know we have a great group signed up, Ron. So grateful to have you back. I know that you have quite a loyal following and people really enjoy spending time with you in class. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll turn, oh, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, we'll be starting in March. It's on Friday mornings at 10 o'clock.
Yes, excellent, excellent. Okay, thank you so much.
Gloria,
Ron.
you have a question?
I
Oh,
do.
sorry, go
Ron,
ahead, Gloria.
Ron, would you give us your email so we can send you a couple of pictures
Yes.
to get
I've got
started?
several addresses. The one that would probably be best to use is Reynolds Run, all one word, Reynolds Run at Comcast.net.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I want to also show people, talk about how you can take your old photographs, analog photographs that are printed, and get them onto your computer.
That's great. That's a definitely useful thing to know how to do. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now we're going to turn it over. I think I said Ed was up next. Did I say? I don't remember. So we have Ed and then Dave Kindy. And you're muted, Ed, so you'll need to unmute.
Yeah, I did that off. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, very good. I got off because I was doing something with my earphones and I realized I wasn't catching anything. I wasn't even using that, so I was afraid when I spoke I wouldn't have I'd have a problem. Well, the last 2 semesters I took an art class with Jim Kirkcaldy and 2 history classes as well with Ray Arhamian, and I really enjoyed them very much. And it was my first time back to Bridgewater. I graduated from Bridgewater State College. I had to correct her when she first did the coming back at me, and I saw Bridgewater State University. It was Bridgewater State College, and I was a psych and psych major, music minor way back when. And since then, my last 30 years, I was teaching French, 8 years of high school French, and then 22 years junior high French and Spanish together. So I mean, doing separate classes, but full-time Spanish, full-time French. So I was told that people would like to have some Spanish, so I thought I would offer this and share my background in Spanish. I'm certified in Spanish. I spent since 1998, I've studied in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and most summers there. I also did 3 weeks in Quito, Ecuador, and Guadalajara, Mexico, and Puebla, Mexico. So I've had quite a bit of classes with those. I am certified math teacher in Spanish. I always lived with a family when I was taking my classes, and I really enjoyed that. And I really want to share the Spanish language and love the Latina people and their culture. And this picture right here and back of me, I took on November 1st in Mexico. I was this past year. I spent 3 weeks in May and 4 weeks in October, November. I was there for the Day of the Dead, and that was in Cuernavaca. So like Ron, my classes will be very much a full participation in the class. I'll be using PowerPoints, handouts, a lot of music. My music, I have a degree in music as well. I'll be doing a lot with handouts, music, and games. And I'll be speaking with my classes as they first come in and see where finding what people's interests and needs are in the language. It's going to be we only have 6 classes, so it's going to be somewhat limiting, but the speed and how far we go will depend on who's in front of me in class, but it'll be very much a participatory class, and I very much look forward to that. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Any questions? I'm just so excited, Ed. I was thrilled when you introduced yourself to me. Like Ron was a member before he was an instructor, and as were you. And we're just, I know people have been asking me for foreign language courses since the beginning of senior college. We've had an American Sign Language course a few times, but it's been hard to find an instructor that was willing to offer this course. And I think this is just hopefully the beginning. Maybe we can, have a part 1 and part 2, depending upon your availability. And I know French, I'm sure there would be lots of folks that would be interested in an introductory French course as well. So thank you so much for, becoming part of our community now as an instructor. I'm just thrilled to have you. If you have any questions for Ed, you can certainly put them in the chat. And last but not least, we have Dave Kindy. Welcome, Dave. We're excited to have you back as well.
Hi, good to see you, Jennifer. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, I'll be teaching, I think this is the 3rd time now, history as I write it. And it's a little bit of an explanation. I am a writer, an author. I write for the Washington Post, Smithsonian, maybe National Geographic. I might have something coming up in there very soon. A bunch of, Washington Post, the Boston Globe, Providence Journal, a bunch of magazines that I write for. And I am a self-professed history nerd, a geek, if you ask my wife, really. But I love history. I have had a long abiding interest in it. And I've been able to take that passion and convert it into writing stories about different subjects that I've been able to find interesting. And fortunately, I've luckily have found an outlet for my writing that people seem to enjoy it. And what the course is basically structured around is I will take some of the articles that I've written for various publications, as I said, Washington Post, Smithsonian, whatever, and I will use that as the basis for a program, one each for 6 weeks, beginning, hold on a second, I'll tell you when. It's beginning on Thursday, March 16th at 1:40 in the afternoon. No early mornings. I don't do mornings, so I do mornings, but not very well, I'm afraid. So, as I said, I have a number of different topics that I want to do. I haven't quite fully got the list established yet, but there's a lot of different things. One of them that I'm hoping to cover is Edgar Allan Poe. I don't know how many people saw the movie The Pale Blue Eye that's on Netflix right now. Well, in it, Edgar Allan Poe it's a fictional movie, but Poe plays an important character in the movie where he is a cadet at West Point, which is in fact true. He was a cadet at West Point, and that prompted me to write an article for the Washington Post about what happened to Edgar Allan Poe. Why did he not become a famous military officer instead of the famous literary figure? And that article was just in the Post not that long ago. But where I differentiate from my article is I add a lot more detail to what was going on. I only have like about 1,200 words that I can tell a story. So there's a lot of things that don't make it into the story. There's a lot of background that I'll be able to share and go into detail and explain what was going on at the time, why this happened, the way it did happen, rather than just the brief presentation sometimes that is presented in the articles. I also have a couple of other ideas, and oftentimes what I'll do is I'll toss it out to the class as well and say, I've got a few ideas for next week. I'll present a couple of topics, see what is, and I'll let them vote on it. We're very democratic, and they'll be able to pick the one that they want to hear. But some of the articles, I think this is the 80th anniversary of the movie Casablanca, just came out, and which is my favorite all-time movie. And I wrote an article about that where it was a movie that got off to a very rocky start to begin with. Humphrey Bogart, who plays, of course, as most people know, Rick Blaine, wasn't sure that he wanted to do this movie because he had not done a romantic lead before. He was used to being the tough guy. And the Ingrid Bergman, who is very beautiful Nordic actress, was very perplexed during the filming too, because a lot of the movie hadn't been scripted when they first started working on it. It kept getting changed along the way. They were working on it as time progressed, and she was very perplexed as, well, how do I portray Ilsa? Is she in love with Rick, or is she in love with this other guy? And it goes back and forth. There's a lot of interesting stories about what happened on the set and why things happened the way they did. I was going to try to keep it local too, since we teach my classes at the Center for Active Living in Plymouth. I thought I would focus on, I just did an article about Everett Landman, who was a sailor in the US Navy in World War II at Okinawa. And he survived 2 kamikaze crashes on his aircraft carrier. He's a Plymouth native and tells a very exciting story about what happened during the war. And of course, as most of the Greatest Generation does, he downplays what his role was in it, and even though it was very exciting nonetheless. I'm also considering doing something on John Bartlett, who was a Plymouth native, the man who wrote Bartlett's famous quotations. Very interesting book. I did something for the Globe a few months ago about when the most recent edition came out, and I kind of focused on the different quotations that we know or we think we know actually. And when you check the quotations, you find out they're not what we remember. We often have a changed version of what the original was. But Bartlett is a very fascinating character. As I said, grew up in Plymouth, went to Boston, started a publishing. He actually ran a bookstore in Boston, and then opened up from there, went into publishing. And his book is still, this is like the 17th edition. It's still, after 150 years, is still actively used as a resource. I'm also thinking about doing something on. I did a piece a while ago about Christmas Eve in 1944 during the Battle of the Bulge. There was this young German boy, 12 years old, with his mother tucked away in the woods where they thought they would be safe, and they weren't. Battle of the Bulge erupts all around them, and that night at their home, it was just he and his mother. They ended up entertaining on Christmas Eve a group of American soldiers and a group of German soldiers, and the mother made them leave their weapons outside. It's a fascinating story that has been told a few times, but there's a lot of misperceptions about how the story actually came about and what was going on. And the last week, I may have a surprise yet. I'm working on something that hasn't been published yet, but I may kind of tease it with a program. I enjoy talking about history. The programs are, I suppose it's a lecture of sorts. I engage my students as much as possible. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I have a set program that I'll go into. But it's like, if people have questions, they can interrupt at any time, and we'll talk about it. And we often go off on tangents and have a fun time with it. I love it. I enjoy doing it. There's just so many fascinating things in history to talk about. I always tip my hat to fiction writers because I don't know how they do it. But to me, history is far more entertaining and far more interesting as far as what has happened. So that's my program. I hope you enjoy it. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much, Dave. We're thrilled to have you back for an in-person experience for our folks that are interested in going to the Center for Active Living in Plymouth, which is a gorgeous facility. They have great staff over there. We have a comfortable space, and usually there's a great group of people that come over and experience those classes. So we'll look forward to that. Evie, did you have a question?
I have a question, not comments about Dave Kindy. The first class he taught, I was so fascinated because he taught us, he talked about how the Zamboni was created. And I'll never forget these things. And bubble wrap, how bubble wrap came to be. And as a result,
Whoops. Sorry, Evie, I accidentally muted you. I'm sorry. Unmute yourself. That was my fault. Sorry.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you're not going to be on Zoom, but as a result of all of those unique little lessons you taught us, I bought a book called Today I Learned. And underneath it says dynamite is made from peanuts. I have had so much fun with this book. And every morning I post on the 2 Bridgewater Facebook pages what I learned that particular day. So today it was a jockey from 1923 managed to win a race after he died. And
That sounds like a story.
it is a story. He literally did not fall off the horse and he won the race. And when the horse stopped running, he did fall off and he was dead. So you fascinated me with those little stories. And I so wish we were going to be on Zoom.
Well, maybe Dave will come back next semester and do a Zoom class.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I
yeah.
learned so much.
Love
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you. For
Thank you.
I love that you inspired her to keep learning about those weird and unusual parts of our history. That's great. I did want to remind folks that we do offer scholarships. So if you have a friend or a neighbor who you think might need one, just tell them to reach out to me. It's all confidential. So we're happy to grant scholarships to anyone that needs one. We also have an event coming up on Wednesday at 10 a.m. It's the final part of our Ask the Scholar speaker series. The title of the talk is Anti-Racism 101. It's with Dr. Jenny Olin Shanahan. She's an associate provost for high impact practices here at Bridgewater State University. She's taught for senior college quite a few times. She's a phenomenal scholar and a woman committed, a white woman who is committed to doing the work of anti-racism. So we're really thrilled to have that event coming up on Wednesday. And we actually have an event tomorrow too, in partnership with the Massachusetts New Hampshire Alzheimer's Association, the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. That's at 10:30 a.m. Sorry, we have a sneezer.
Sorry.
So that's at 10:30. So both of those events are free and open to the public. So if you are not a member of senior college, you can just go on our website to sign up to receive the Zoom links for those events. And we're getting close to the time. If there's any quick questions, I'm happy to answer them. Happy to say thank you to the instructors and release them from the space. So they're volunteering to be here and we're so thrilled to have them. And we'll see you all in senior college if there's no instructor in questions. And thanks for being here. Thanks, everybody. It's good to see you tonight.